Thank you. My name is James Gross. I'm from BVN in Sydney, and this project's called Beehive. It's in Auckland, New Zealand, and it's a project that we did with our partners Jasmax in New Zealand. So it's a project that was conceived and done through Sydney and Auckland as a collaboration. This is a project about making a people place. It's a workplace building, and it's really trying to explore the idea of a new culture, not just a workplace culture, but a building culture as well. But importantly, it's about how we make people belong to the place that they're spending their time in. It's these sorts of diagrams about how we find culture inside buildings. I know we talk about it all the time, how we find the sort of spirit of these places that we can all relate to inside workplaces. It's on the north shore of Auckland, and it exists in a 20th century office park. And we have put together a master plan that takes it from this, which is effectively a surface car park with a few freestanding buildings, into a place which will be a mixed development, living, working, retail and so on in the future. So this is the first stage, and that's the building there. We've done a couple of other projects on this site. There's the building in the centre. And our client's brief was that it had to be a flexible building, it had to create community, and it had to deal with all of those issues of well-being. It had to be in a serviced environment, and it had to merge the public realm. This is particularly our point of view, that we are searching for a building and a workplace here which merges the public and the private realm, which we think is the big issue in these sorts of buildings. So it's to blend work and community, it's to create community, it's to host, to eat and drink, to play in a serviced environment, and therefore create a work community. Facilitating place, creating community, and enabling belonging. That's the target we set for ourselves. It's a square plan, it has a side core. You enter in through what is essentially a kind of village, if you like, an eating and drinking village, and that village penetrates into the ground floor. We have a stair that circulates up through the building, and at the back we have meeting rooms and so on, which turn into a bar and a nightclub after 5 o'clock. And then there's an internal landscape. But the key here is the way that you need to engage with the public realm as part of your experience of the private realm. So you can see from the plan that sort of village character at the front, and then you can see that the village, as it were, extends back into the ground floor of the building, and the entry is somewhat ambiguous and concealed. It is at that point. So as you approach the building, you actually approach the building through a kind of walking street, and the entry is in fact following the yellow arrow, and that's a deliberate tactic to merge the outside with the inside, and then this is the lobby as you enter in. It's all about creating changeable workplaces and creating a sort of flexible interior. So the building is able to adopt a whole range of stances in its floor planning. We enter in through that public space. The atrium on every floor changes shape. There is a stair, there's a concierge on each floor and a kitchen, and then the private spaces around the perimeter of the building are creating flexible suites. So the suites change overnight. They can move to accommodate growth from 5 to 20 people or so. And then free spaces in the middle, or free spaces can penetrate the suites. And in fact, you can create a completely free and open floor as well. Flexibility being the imperative. It is a naturally ventilated building, which we do by facade ventilation, and it has glare screens and of course sunscreens as well. The issue is how we create a flexible floor plate, how we create suites and enclosed spaces that are flexible. That seems to be the issue we deal with in all sorts of workplaces. So the concept plan demonstrates the perimeter suites, which are flexible and variable. So we designed with a furniture manufacturer a flexible partition wall, which sounds easy but is in fact very difficult to do, especially with an overnight change requirement. And so the movement through the building is deliberately through this major stair. Of course, the lifts are located as much as possible to be inconvenient. And so the stair becomes the central sort of image, if you like, of the movement of the building. And of course, then that accommodates the flexibility of the free space. So this is a fully occupied or kitted out suites plan, and there is another floor that has no suites at all. In section, you can see how the differing layers of the atrium contribute to different pockets of places that you can find as nooks or as places that you can work. Always the backdrop is this idea of the community of the building. And around the edges, the suites are flexible. The walls don't touch the ceiling because we have to get the natural ventilation through. And of course that assists us being able to change the partition system overnight. There's a range of different people that are in this space. They all have different requirements in these very contemporary workplace settings for privacy and acoustics and so on. But also we're really concerned about this building being a building which talks about wellness. So we deliberately let the sun in, we deliberately let the sun penetrate deep into the building, and so when you go to the toilet you have to walk through shafts of sunlight, which is a sort of a liberating thing to do. And you can get your 10,000 steps up every day because it's pretty hard to catch the lifts. You've got to walk up the steps, for those of you who wear Fitbits. And because of the natural ventilation, it's a fabulously sort of liberating place to be, because you're breathing most of the time fresh air. It's obviously mixed mode ventilation, but the thermal chimneys on the facade pull the air out through the base of the building and through the atrium. And of course, searching for an expression of the building, this is the thermal chimney on the facade. Searching for some way of describing a building which is about natural ventilation is sort of tough in a way, but it becomes more like a machine than a sort of romantic building.
I'm a fourth generation North Shore person. This property has been in our family since 1938. We have a very strong connection to this area. Over the last sort of 20 years, we realised that office parks aren't the solution for a site like this, and we could only ever build very large buildings. We really had to come up with a solution that enabled small tenants to be able to go into these large buildings on Smales Farm. The result of the research and development on that is this building.
Its organic expression is really about bringing people together as human beings and creating a community inside the building. It has quiet spaces to the edge. As you come more to the centre, it brings that sense of community to the fore.
It's a very different environment to being in a small separate office by yourself somewhere. Rather than looking out, the building looks in. That is where the whole community impact of the building is. An open, light, vibrant environment.
Externally, though, it's a very different story. It's very much designed like a machine. For me, that's a great sort of contradistinction between the inside and the outside. The inside is soft and warm and fuzzy, and the outside is sharp, deliberate, and about technology.
Goodside very much is an extension of the shared space within the building. It's been designed to facilitate people coming out here and continuing to work, but in a more informal and relaxed environment. And ultimately, we're planning to become a full live, work, visit, play community.
Why shouldn't the places where we work be like the places that we live and the places that we enjoy being? As architects, what we have to do is make places that enrich people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Question about language, really. You said that the inside is soft and warm and fuzzy, or the film did.
I did, yes.
You did in the film.
Yes.
Before you had the haircut.
Yes.
You were more fuzzy before, I think.
I'm like the exterior now, sharp.
But presumably your practice did the entire thing, the
Yes.
building and the inside.
Yes.
So we've got quite a difficult job because we're not quite sure where the interior and the building kind of are distinct. But setting that aside for the moment, The inside fuzzy bit of the orange wiggly stair and the ribbon balconies looked very sort of hosed down and plasticky to me, especially compared with the agglomeration of sheds outside, which are basically a wood and fabric and much more natural language. What made you go for such an artificial language when you were aiming for fuzziness?
Well, I wouldn't call it artificial.
I did.
You know, so responding to your point, I would call it a more abstract language in that it is clearly trying to be an organic space within a highly structured, highly deliberate structure.
The materials are not organic. They're very washable.
Sure, and I think that we've been doing quite a lot of bespoke workplace buildings, meaning that the interior and the exterior. And what we've found is that, like that building, and I'm sure like all of you have seen, the idea of the warehouse is the thing that people often reference, the exposed surfaces, the deliberate display of structure and so on. And my view is that in this building, that is very much the language of your experience of the building once you're on the floor, and the contrast of that sort of organic smoothness is indeed just that. It's a contrast to the randomness, if you like. It's absolutely deliberate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to pick up on your central organic point, and I noticed that you used landscape on the inside of the building, but it looks a little bit like an afterthought with the potted plants and the kind of raised area down below. And I just wonder how much of that wish to have green planting on the inside of the building was really thought through from the beginning.
That film was taken some time ago. The bed is about, you may have noticed, there are strands of planting going up from that bed that climb up through the building. So in time they'll go right up to the skylight as reverse vines, if you like. So that's the point of that bed in a sense, but also it creates a sort of softness to what is ordinarily a very difficult space, which is the base of an atrium like that. So it has intent, but it's on its way.
Thank you.
Yes, about we are judging today the interior and not the building, but yes. I think the scale of the stair looks fine, but yes, I agree that this orange piece is really like the main feature of your interiors. And do we mean that the stair is also the place where you want to characterize your work, or inside this building as this, like a tree or something? I'm just asking this question because just wondering if it is a place everybody has to be on, or
well, it's because of our placement of the lifts, it becomes the central way of getting through the building. So it's clearly the most important way of connecting the floors, and all the floors are open, and people obviously. The typical thing happens in a staircase in a building. People meet and all that sort of stuff. Its colour, its orangeness is about, orange is a very energetic colour, so it brings, this is a building full of startups and, quite young people in the main. So the colour is about reflecting the energy that is being expended in the building, and it is deliberately shaped and smooth because it is in contrast to the somewhat, you might call it untidy, if you like, spaces that once you arrive on the floor, the furniture is very mobile, it all gets moved around, it's not an organised space. So the idea of the stair was that it was the trunk that connected all of those spaces, but it was deliberately, if you like, it's deliberately like a piece of machinery in a way. It's a device, really.
I felt that centrepiece seemed really successful. The way in which you referred to the exterior as a bit of a machine. In a sense, I get the feeling that extends into all of the suites that come round, all these partitions that move, and then in the middle, almost like a painting, is this incredible, fluid, colourful element that really would have to make that a very sustaining place to work, not just sustainable. My question actually was two questions. One is the garden down the bottom, I thought looked incredible actually. And I wanted to know whether it was really real right at the bottom there.
Richard.
And then the other thing was, in terms of the ventilation through the space and all the exposed surfaces and the need to keep the flexible partitions down from the top, how does it work acoustically?
Well, good question. And in open workplaces, that's one of the central issues. So there is a degree of white noise, but there is also another decision made, which reflects the nature of that building, and that is we have music that at a very low volume throughout the building, and if you start to listen, you can hear it, but it's not thud 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 music. It's actually but it is very contemporary music, and it helps to just create an atmosphere. But I have to say you're not aware of it until you really listen for it. And the same music is then piped out into all the cafes and bars outside, so that it extends the experience of that oral experience of being in the building. And then the other component of that is that the CEO of the place is a disc jockey. So he also has nights where there is a club, as it were, that extends all through the ground floor and out into that village area. So the whole thing turns into a club, again with this infrastructure that sits in the ceiling, so that it's very variable in the way that the music works. But it is a combination of those two things. However, also in the work that we've done in these sorts of buildings, actually you want noise. Having a deathly silence is actually counterproductive. So we actually encourage the noise.
Are we talking about like Brian Eno kind of music, or are we talking about a dull thudding?
No, more Brian Eno. Yes. I don't think we want thud thud thud. I'm a bit old for that, actually.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.